The war in Ukraine did not start with Russia's full-scale invasion in February of 2022. In reality, it began 10 years ago, in 2014. In February, protests in Kyiv toppled the pro-Russian government. Russia then seized Crimea from Ukraine and sent special forces into the eastern Donbas region to stoke a separatist rebellion there. And there, the Ukrainians fought back. The first flashpoint, the town of Sloviansk. Paramilitaries led by a Russian sometime FSB officer, Igor Gerkin, seized administrative buildings in Sloviansk on the 12th of April and appointed a local man, Vyacheslav Ponomaryov, as a people's mayor. Ukraine's military operation to oust them got off to a spluttering start, but the armed forces were soon bolstered by newly formed volunteer battalions who took the fight to Sloviansk. Ponomaryov called on Putin for help.
We are asking for help. If you can't send in peacekeeping troops, help by sending food, weapons, help however you can.
Well, since then, it's been repeatedly shown that Russia wasn't just helping, but was the instigator of the separatist People's Republic in Donbas. Nevertheless, Ukraine regained control of Sloviansk on the 5th of July, though much of the rest of the Donbas remained under de facto Russian occupation. Today, Sloviansk in the Kremlin sights once again. Russia's stated aim is to occupy the whole region, and after long battles, its forces have taken key towns such as Bakhmut and Avdiivka, razing them to the ground in the process. Could the same fate await Sloviansk? Well, Gulliver Cragg revisits Sloviansk for France 24.
Explosions on the front line can be seen from the hills above Sloviansk every day. Yet, also every day, the intercity train from Kyiv rolls in right on time. Svetlana is traveling from Germany, where she's been living as a refugee for the past 2 years.
It took 32 hours just to get to Kyiv, but I'm more than happy to make the journey if it means I can visit my home.
Most of all, she's hoping to see her son, Alexei, who's fighting around 80 kilometers south of Sloviansk.
Will you be able to come? I asked him. He said, I don't know. And that's it. Oh, what a cutie.
She gets chatting to Victoria, who's on her way to see her husband, who took up arms when Russia attacked Kyiv region in 2022. Their son, Misha, was 3 months old at the time.
He waits on every phone call from his dad. He's always picking up the phone and saying, "Papa, Papa, hello, Papa."
Victoria was still a child herself when the war started, with the 3-month occupation of Sloviansk by a Russian-led commando. But Svetlana remembers all too well.
It was terrifying. But then the Ukrainian army chased those guys out of our city, and they went to Donetsk. And after that, somehow it didn't feel so much like there was a war going on. But in 2022, when they started shelling Sloviansk again, that's when I understood that the situation was serious and I needed to leave.
This is her second visit home since then. The first time, Alexei didn't get any leave.
Так ти приїдеш все-таки. Ну, приїжджай, синок, я рада дуже. Я чувствувала, що ти приїдеш. Чувствувала. Давай.
So it's an old friend who meets Svetlana off the train.
А де твій чемодан?
They go to wait for Alexei.
Альошка. Синок.
Та що ти плачеш?
Рада тебе бачити.
It's Orthodox Easter Sunday. But the meeting is not as joyous as Svetlana had hoped. Fresh from the front, Oleksiy is exhausted.
I'm just not used to being around people anymore.
Yes. It's like you always say, we're living in different worlds. Of course, we can't understand what they're going through out there.
It's better if you never know.
The next day, Oleksiy is less tired, but still in a somber mood.
So nice and pleasant here. And so many children came back.
That's bad. At any moment, everything could change.
It's still a pleasant walk.
It's pleasant, of course, but more pleasant is when you're protected by solid concrete.
You're right, my son.
Sloviansk has been shelled repeatedly since 2022, but many fear the worst is yet to come. Today's full-on Russian offensive on the Donbas region is not like in 2014, when the invaders tried to frame it as a popular uprising and recruited locals to their cause.
Most of the guys who took up arms were unemployed.
Bums.
Though in fact, lots of people believed in it because no one knew who was right and who was wrong.
Later, Oleksiy gives me the number of a childhood friend of his who joined the so-called separatist rebellion. He wishes to remain anonymous, but says he had attended counter-protests in support of Ukraine's pro-Russian government before it was toppled.
Then, one morning, I get a phone call saying they've taken the police station. We went down there, and already there were barricades and piles of tires. But who seized the police station? Not people from Sloviansk. Some Ukrainians, but mostly Russians. They started handing out weapons, and of course, we were all pumped up on adrenaline. Plus, everyone thought it would be like with Crimea. The little green men had come, everyone would clap, and it would be a done deal. But that's not how things went at all.
The Russian-led paramilitaries had also seized the town hall, where Denis Behunov worked in the press office at the time. He stopped going to work, but after a few days, he says, the occupiers told him to come back, to make things seem normal.
I came here and tried to open my office, but I could hear something. The door was locked, but I could hear that someone was in there. And when I started to open the door, this guy who was standing here with a machine gun saw me and starts running towards me. So I understood that something was up. And he's like, "What are you breaking in on the prisoners for?" And I understood then that they were holding hostages in the town hall. So I said, "Oh, it's my office, but if I just didn't know that there are prisoners there, and, you know..."
Meanwhile, downstairs, daily press conferences sought to present the whole situation as a grassroots separatist uprising. Many Ukrainians are bitter at the way international media apparently believed that myth.
What I feel is not so much anger as sadness and disappointment, because the circumstances were such that had I been in the place of those Western journalists, I would also probably have not understood what was going on, not knowing the context. I really couldn't, because I understood that if I said anything, I would immediately end up in the same place as those hostages that I heard in my office.
Numerous prisoners were executed. Some for pro-Ukrainian views, others for petty crimes. Among the victims was Maria Pichko's son, also called Oleksiy.
The accusation was apparently that he broke into a house and stole a shirt and some trousers, and they sentenced him to death.
Maria says she had a printed copy of the death sentence, but can't find it, or the last letter Oleksiy wrote her.
I used to always carry it with me, but now I don't know where I've put it. My head is in such a mess these days. It was just a little note on a scrap of paper, and he wrote, "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm sorry for everything. Please forgive me, and goodbye. I'm going to be shot."
Since then, Maria has also lost a grandson and a son-in-law killed in action. This cemetery is about 22 kilometers from the front line.
We've been afraid to come up and tidy up here lately. You never know when there might be a shelling.
Maria says she came to realize only gradually who was to blame for her family's tragedy.
I even wrote to Putin about it. I didn't know then what Russia was up to. It's actually genocide, and it's all the fault of Putin and his cronies.
But back in 2014, as Ukraine's military fought to regain control of Sloviansk, many residents held Kiev responsible and accused the Ukrainian army of shelling civilian buildings. Ukraine said it was the Russian side doing that on purpose to stir up anti-Ukrainian feeling. This local doctor, who's now a Ukrainian army medic, admits that that is hard to prove.
Often they'd shoot from the edge of town from a direction that could plausibly have come from Ukrainians stationed further away. So to say for sure who did it is not possible, because the trajectories were the same. But here, there were no Ukrainian forces where the strike came from. The mortar flew in that direction. Ukrainian forces were stationed over there, on Karachun Hill, and over there.
But the occupiers also drew Ukrainian fire on the city with their artillery, he says.
They could easily take 3 or 4 shots and move on before the Ukrainians managed to fire back. And then they would present it as if the Ukrainian army was targeting the city.
Russian TV channels had teams all over the region pushing a narrative of Ukrainian nationalists bent on killing civilians in Donbas.
But those channels accurately showed which places had been damaged. Lots and lots of people watched them. Did it have an influence? I guess so. I guess on me too. But it's hard to assess, you understand? Because I've changed.
Sloviansk itself has changed.
In July 2014, when this northern part of Donetsk region was liberated, but the southeastern part of it remained under the control of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, we thought that we might be able to show that the Ukrainian project was better than Russia's Russian world.
Denise became one of the leaders of a burgeoning pro-Ukrainian civil society with a hub in this former printworks.
The various Western foundations that came helped us create centers of civic activism. And thanks to that, the proportion of people who felt a sense of belonging to Ukraine, to Kyiv, increased. And then after the full-scale invasion of 2022, that dynamic got much stronger. Oh, sorry, I've got to go. Our meeting is starting.
Today, Denise's meetings are mostly online. Other activists have left town for security reasons.
We'd done pretty much everything. We'd established normal relations between society and the authorities, which weren't all closed off anymore. But then the war changed everything, and now, as you see, it's so empty here.
One community center in the town is still operational.
Тепер заливаємо яйце, а потім обжигаємо і проявляємо його.
This technique is from a lady called Zoriana Dzeba, who teaches Ukrainian traditional crafts. We've got a group online. It's called Park Maria, which means dream. We call ourselves dreamers.
The Park Maria is an actual park, revitalized in 2014 by Yevgenia and other volunteers. Denise has arranged to meet her here.
Nice to see you. Hi. Today you can congratulate us. We just completed a first aid course.
Fantastic. Well done. Actually, I've hurt my thumb. Maybe you can help.
What he really wants her help with, though, is with his project for a new Ukrainian cultural council in Sloviansk.
I think you could be a great generator of ideas, and it would strengthen the cooperation between civil society and the military administration.
Who else will be on it?
Well, apart from you and me, there's pretty much no one else in town.
Yevhenia fled Sloviansk during the 2014 occupation, but returned that summer full of ideas to make the city better.
People were very motivated because they came back after evacuation and understood that they really like their town. And when you love something, you want to change something in that space.
We had so many celebrations here. So many people came.
But Olha is just visiting today. She already evacuated from Sloviansk and lives in central Ukraine. Denise and Yevhenia both admit that they may have to leave too if the Russian army gets much closer. They try not to think about it too much.
Can we change the situation? No, but life goes on. What can you do? Life can't just be all about suffering. We can't just sit here and suffer.
Yet in front of the town hall, the row of tributes to local men killed in action keeps on growing.
This was the son of a friend of mine. I knew him well. Rest in peace, Yura.
Gulliver Crag revisiting Sloviansk for France 24. Well, that's all from this week's edition. You can catch it and the previous editions as well on our website at france24.com. More news in a moment. Thanks for watching.